So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this. It is really early in the morning and got up, made my cup of coffee in my Thanos mug, which I love, and wanted to get up before all the kids get up and shoot this video. This one I've been wanting to do and start for a while. The original plan was to create something like a vlog. And there are many reasons as to why I wanted to do it, but a part of it was that as I get older, especially since becoming a father myself, and the more I work in medicine and all the experiences, my own mortality comes into play more and more, and I'm reminded of it all the time. And so I figured I'd start this whole series off with this. I will probably be doing more of these down the road, but they're called Story Time is maybe the title of it. And what it is that I'll be telling sort of a personal story or experience, and hopefully with a learning point to it all. And today's will be about how being a doctor and going through the training and experiences of the medical field and what it has taught me about life and death and just how precious life truly is. And I figure it was very appropriate to do something like this at this time. If this video is up many years down the road and you're watching it just now on YouTube, just so you know, it's September of 2020, and boy, 2020 is a doozy. A lot's going on, and when I go to work every day, I'm just constantly reminded of how a lot of people in the world right now are really struggling, whether it's emotionally, psychologically, financially. I figure putting a video up like this will hopefully kind of give a reminder or remind people that everything that's happening right now is temporary, and this too shall pass. We will come out of this better and stronger, and it will be chalked up as another one of life's experiences. But let's just get right into the story. So life and death, what has the medical field taught me? When you're younger, you feel like you're invincible and you don't really think about your own mortality or anything like that. But as you get older, and for those of you that have children, especially when you have children, you really start to recognize it. And that's why you see so many possibly friends, relatives that when they have kids, suddenly they're getting into shape, they're eating better, and because your responsibility is greater. There's no greater reward, at least for me, than being a parent, and I'm sure many of you out there can identify. But it's by far the best thing I've ever done in my life. But all this sort of led to me thinking more and more, again, about my own mortality, and it all started in medical school. Prior to medical school, I experienced death. Like my grandparents passed away, and also had a very good friend who committed suicide, and that hit me in a big way. But it wasn't until my mother-in-law passed away, I don't know why, it really hit me. I loved her dearly, and then just every death that I heard about that was very tragic just really touched me in a different way, as well as going to work and being a doctor. You're surrounded by morbidity and mortality or suffering, and some of your patients pass away, and I mean it affects you in a way. But fast forward a little bit from prior to med school, and just want to share this story where I remember being in my third year of medical school. I was on call with the general surgery team, the trauma team that night, and it was an unforgettable experience. And it was a relatively slow day. We were all just kind of hanging out, and then about time to go to bed, so we all went to bed. But then at about 1 a.m. in the morning, our pagers go off. We hear the helicopter land, the emergency helicopter for the ER, and we all scramble into action. We're down there in the ER waiting for the patient to arrive, and they wheel him in on the stretcher. Immediately everybody just kind of goes into action. I, as a medical student, didn't really know much. Well, you're armed with a lot of knowledge, but you don't really know what to do with it yet. And so you're more there as an observer and trying to help the best that you can. But I remember this kid, he was 16 years old, and some of these facts have been distorted just for protection's sake. But he's 16 years old, being wheeled in on a gurney, and I figured, I would just run up and comfort him. So I ran up, and it's always important to lay hands on the patient. So I, remember resting my hand on his shoulder and his arm, and just saying, "You're going to be okay. Just relax. We're going to take care of you." And he never said a word throughout the entire time. And I remember looking into his eyes, and it was something I'll never forget. I can still envision it right now. There was just this look of doom inside his eyes. And, on the outside, he actually looked okay. You know, we examined him thoroughly on the outside. He had some bruising. His stomach was a little bit swollen, but it wasn't until we ran him through the CT scan or the CAT scan that we realized the extent of his damage. See, what happened was this kid was out on a four-wheeler and he had a horrible accident. Basically flew off of it into a tree, suffered massive internal damage. He had ruptured many organs, and when myself and the other residents saw it, we sort of knew that what the writing on the wall was with that kind of damage. And so, you know, we stabilized him and got him to the ICU and just kind of watched him for a little bit. But then I remember he started to decompensate quite quickly. So at that point, we rushed him into the operating room. Let's just say that we did everything that we could to try and save his life by controlling the bleeding and patch whatever damage we could, but it was too extensive. And, you know, we packed his abdomen with as much gauze as we could to try to control it, and basically ended up wheeling him out of the operating room when we realized that there really wasn't anything else that we could do. And when he arrived at the ICU, he almost immediately coded and passed away. And he was just 16 years old. But that death really, really hit me hard, and it was my first experience of death as a doctor at that point. I remember going with the resident. He grabbed me to go and talk to the patient's family. And boy, he had a lot of family there. You know, we broke the news to them, and at this point, I think it was like 3 or 4 in the morning, somewhere around there. It was all a bit of a blur. They went ballistic. They started yelling. Some people started crying hysterically, and others began to throw chairs and anything they could get a hold of. And it was basically turning into a very dangerous scene. The resident and I rushed out of there, and actually we had to call security. At this point, I went back up to my call room, laid down, and of course I couldn't sleep, just trying to process everything that happened. The adrenaline was still sort of working its way through my body. You know, came about 6, 7 in the morning, and the next shift was coming on, and I was going off shift. And I remember just going to my locker, not really processing what all has happened. Went to change and looked down at my shoes, and there were 2 drops of blood on my shoes. And I knew it was from him. And I don't know what happened. I mean, at that point, it just all hit me. The emotions just came rushing, and I just remember dropping to the floor and just sobbing. The tragedy of it all and everything just sort of hit me all at once. You know, you're physically, emotionally, psychologically exhausted at that point. I remember taking those shoes off and putting in my locker, and I never wore them again. I don't know why. I kept them as a reminder of why I chose to become a physician and the challenges and the heartaches that occur with that. So every day for the rest of my 3rd and 4th year of medical school, I would open the locker, see those shoes, and be reminded of a job that I have to do every day. I could tell you just countless stories. The other one, just real quick, is also quite tragic. It was a 11-year-old boy. He had severe complications from mononucleosis and he became very, very ill, for a long story short. And we took him to the operating room to try and save his life. And at this point, I was actually an anesthesia resident. As an anesthesiologist, you're in charge of keeping the patient alive while letting the surgeons do what they need to do. And I remember looking at his labs and everything and just sort of knowing that this was sort of a desperate act to try and do what we were doing. But sometimes, I don't know, the human psyche, doing something is better than nothing, and especially with someone so young. And so I remember the big issue with this particular patient was that his potassium levels were very high. For those of you that don't know, if your potassium is super high, it affects your heart and can lead to essentially heart failure. And you can see it on an EKG. There's a wave on there called the T wave, and it just shoots up, spikes very, very, very high. And I remember hooking him up to the anesthesia monitors and looking up at the monitor and just seeing these huge booming T waves. I've never seen that before, and to this day, I still have not seen that before, as big as those T waves were. So, you know, as anesthesiologists, doing everything we can back there, you know, pushing calcium, sodium bicarbonate, you know, you're breathing the patient down to hyperventilate them. You're doing all these things to sort of protect the heart and drive the potassium. back into the cells, and nothing was bringing it down. We kept checking the lab after lab. His potassium just kept staying where it was and actually slowly started climbing. And I just remember sitting down and feeling so defeated and knowing the outcome of this that was for certain at that point. And I just remember putting my hand on the kid's head and just stroking his hair. And just thinking to myself that, this is the last time, might be me, that will be stroking this kid's hair while he's alive. I say all this only because right now, with all the suffering that's going on in the world, I wanted to kind of give perspective to life. Whether you call it perspective, attitude, point of view, whatever you want to call it. The beauty of being human is that every day you wake up, every moment that you live through, you get to choose how you want to deal with that situation. And you can choose to or view the world as glass half empty or glass half full. And this is my way of trying to encourage people to hang in there, view the world as glass half full, and to have hope that this too shall all pass, and to remind you of just how precious life is. Because every day I wake up, every morning that you wake up, I encourage you to remind yourself that it's a blessing and that, you're very fortunate, because many, many people have passed at a much, much younger age and have not lived to where you are today. And that's a real gift. And I just wanted to remind people of that and hopefully shed a little bit of more positive news in the world with such sad stories, I guess. And that's pretty much it. I just figured it was important to get this video out. So thanks for watching. If you have words of encouragement and hope, then please put it in the comments down below. I'm sure that people would love to read it. Till next time, be kind, stay safe, take care. Bye-bye.